Oh, we've made the connection here with David Lombardi. Why don't we go out to the UMA guest line here? David Lombardi covers the Niners for The Athletic. David, good to have you back on KNBR, man. What's up?
Yeah, thanks. How you guys doing? I'm about to hop into the bay for a swim, and then I remembered you guys are calling at 4:50, so it's 83 degrees out in the city right now.
Oh, dude,
so
it is gorgeous.
Awesome.
I went for a walk before the show, and normally Tom and I are freezing in this meat locker of a studio. It felt kind of nice, but it's all of a sudden cold.
Well, hold on a minute. You're jumping in the bay?
He's over. He swims. Yeah, he's at the aquatic park.
Yeah.
Where are you hanging out, swimming?
Wow.
Look at you.
Yeah, I'm over by Aquatic Park right now. So I did Alcatraz a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about doing an Ocean Beach to Bay Bridge swim at 7 a.m. next week.
Oh, hold on.
Longest one.
You swam out to Alcatraz?
Yeah.
Wow.
So those guys could have made it. Those guys could have made it, is what you're saying. They might actually have made it.
Before the Cardinals, we think they did make it. You know, if you talk to people who kind of know that's the government's version is that they didn't make it, but they wanted to dissuade other people from trying the same thing.
I love it. I love
David.
it. How are the currents?
The currents were crazy when we did Alcatraz. So we were doing like counter current. We had our guy on the boat kind of pointed us toward a certain desk target on the coast, which was much removed from where we were actually going. And then we just kind of trusted the current to guide us. So we had a good guy to help guide us along, and then we made it. So today the currents are pretty crazy too. So today should be one gnarly swim.
Impressive, man. Good
for you, dude.
Ever seen any sharks?
I never see the sharks. They're around you for sure. I mean, we're right next to that Great White Triangle, right? So especially when we go out to Ocean Beach, once you're outside the Golden Gate next week, they'll be all around you. It's just that you kind of have to hope that they don't like humans. They're looking for seals, and they don't.
You just kind of have to hope.
You gotta hope, yeah.
Life is risk. Life is risk. So you go for it.
Talking to David Lombardi, noted risk taker and an adventurer out in the bay near the Farallon Islands, dude. Don't make that swim. That's a little too dangerous.
There actually is and if you go to the Dolphin Club in San Francisco and you go up to the record board, there are different swims, and one of them's the Farallon Island swim.
Wild.
And I'm like, that's one that I'm not going to be going for the record.
Yeah, that's on Shark Week where the whales are like coming up under the great whites and like holding them there. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't need a whale murder zone on my way to a.
And if you're going to swim out there, don't go.
You can hear them.
That's the Farallon Islands would be the definition of a hostile road game.
There we go.
You want to play in that stadium.
The hostile road game. Dude, great transition by you. Absolute pro, David. David Lombardi of The Athletic. So, hostile road game last week in terms of what the Niners had to see, and Tom was all over it. Said he thought it was a good situation for the Browns to upset. I thought it was kind of ridiculous, and then we saw it play out. We saw basically everything happen with Brock Purdy that we had not seen previously. You're great at breaking down the numbers, man. I love looking at your pieces because it gives me scope on why something happened or what happened at a certain rate. I know how much the Giants had blitzed against Brock, and he never really looked like he was under duress the way he did on Sunday. Is that a case of just the talent was better, or did Jim Schwartz do something we haven't seen before?
Well, if you look at what the Browns are doing defensively, this is a historically good defense so far. They've given up 1,002 yards through 6 games, which is the third lowest total since 1970. So, I think the numbers were historic before the 49ers game through 5, but everybody said, they haven't played anybody. And then they did that to the 49ers offense that was scoring 30-plus against everybody, and I think now people are coming around to it, and if you look at any metric, they're just head and shoulders not above just the rest of the league this year, but above what most teams have done. My wife's dad the other day, I told him that number that I just told you, the 1,002 yards. He was like, whoa, how many NFL teams are there? And I said 32. And then so he did the math in his head, and that's like 15 or 1,600 teams since 1970. And they're number 3 on that list. So it just gives you an idea of what this Browns defense is doing in a really like offense-driven time, right? So I just think the 49ers ran into a really, really, really good defense that actually runs a lot of what the 49ers run. They run a wide 9. They're firing off the ball. They're aggressive. The linebackers are flying around. And when you have that kind of personnel running a sound scheme, then it could end up bad if you don't execute on your opportunities. And despite all that, they were still in position. The 49ers were still in position to kick a field goal and get out of there with a win, right? So just comes down to executing. It was 2 high-level teams playing against each other, at least when you looked at 49ers offense against Browns.
What did you see from Brock Purdy that we haven't seen through the first part of his career?
Well, for the first time, he had to really, really bounce through some adversity, right? I'm not counting the Philadelphia game because he didn't have an arm to throw with in that game, but they had -5 net yards through the first 6 drives of the second half. So nothing was working, right? And some of it was Brock's fault. Some of it was his receiver's fault. I mean, I remember he missed McCaffrey. Could have been a touchdown. Yep. Brandon Ayuk dropped what could have been a score. Then Brock was he was getting pressured so quickly. But he was able to figure out a way to make that final drive work, which we hadn't really, seen that kind of challenge, that kind of gauntlet thrown down in front of him yet. So I think all things considered, the 49ers left that game saying, okay, I mean, this guy, when deadline pressure showed up, when he absolutely had to get something done, he did. And nothing was a gimme on that last drive. I mean, even the throw to Ayuk that he took 33 yards downfield, Myles Garrett was right on Brock Purdy right away. Trent Williams was playing with a banged-up ankle, right? He was just kind of hanging in there. There was a throw to Jennings that set up the field goal at the end, out pattern, where I timed it. I mean, Garrett just ran the hoop around Trent Williams, and he hit Brock Purdy in 1.8 or 1.9 seconds. So that ball was out in 1.8. The fastest average in the league to get the ball out is 2.3. So Purdy had to get it out really quick. He got it out quick. He got him in field goal range. It's hard to ask for much more against that defense, which I think if they stay healthy, people are going to realize in a few weeks, wow, this is a unit that's really special.
Talking to David Lombardi of The Athletic, he does a great job covering the 49ers. If Christian McCaffrey were unable to go on Monday, or even if he is able to go in a limited capacity, who's the number 2 guy? Is it Elijah Mitchell when healthy, or can we see more J.P. Mason, you think, going forward?
I think you'd see both of them. I think that it might be a split load between those 2 guys. I mean, the 49ers, Mitchell's your pure outside zone running back. He fits that kind of scheme really well, but they run a ton of gap scheme to keep defenses off balance now too. So this is no longer just an exclusively outside zone team. So Jordan Mason, bring him in at 225 pounds and, let him bruise around a little bit. So I think that he's really impressed them. Mitchell's coming off the injury. Mitchell earned a lot with the 49ers in the past, especially in 2021. He had a nice season there as a rookie. Remember, he had a big game against the Vikings, actually, 130-plus yards. So if those are the 2 guys that are available, I would expect both of them to see plenty of run.
I'm curious if you've seen anything, David, in watching this team on defense, the run defense. I don't know, yards per carry, they're in the middle of the pack, which I'd expect to be better. But I don't know if it's like a couple big runs, one bad game. The stats can be deceiving when you just look at the stat. You've seen it. What do you see in their run defense? Is it a little leaky? Is it leakier than maybe it definitely leakier than it's been the last couple of years? But what do you see from it? Is it cause for concern or what's there?
It's absolutely a cause for concern. It's something they need to fix. In 2021 and 2022, they finished with a top 2 run defense in both seasons, and that this entire defensive approach is centered around stopping the run. Because if you stop the run at an elite level, then the opposing offense is faced with down and distance where they have to pass, and then the pass rush can pin its ears back and get after the quarterback. Arden Key, their former defensive lineman, used to always say, stop the run so we can have some fun. Yep. And they're not having as much fun this year. They're 15th in sacks this year. They only have 15 sacks, and it's not for lack of talent or lack of winning when it's a pass rushing situation. It's because they just haven't gotten as many of those situations because they haven't earned them stopping the run. The advanced metrics say that they're number 25 against the run this year. So it's even worse than the yards per carry. They gave up 160 to a Cleveland team that didn't have a great passing threat, right? I mean, the 49ers were really disappointed because they thought P.J. Walker, okay, here's a backup quarterback. Let's make him beat us. It never got to that point because the rushing attack sustained the Browns and let them really grab control of game flow there by then. So the 49ers weren't happy with the way they set the edge. They say they're going to have to do a much better job with their defensive end, setting the edge schematically, probably to focus on that a little bit more. And they just have to be more disciplined. I mean, when you run the wide 9, you're elongated along the front, so the holes are bigger than normal. And you're also attacking, so they're not reading and reacting. They're attacking off the ball. That means that you're vulnerable to traps. And that Jerome Ford run, the 22-yard run that put the Browns in field goal range there at the end, that was a trap. And Javon Kinlaw fired through the line of scrimmage as if he was trying to penetrate for a pass rush, but he basically fell victim to the trap, and Jerome Ford ran right by him. So penetrating is so important in this defense, but you can't do it just, no holds barred. There has to be some kind of spatial awareness there of when they're going to try to burn you with it. Plus, you got to tackle better. They had 10 missed tackles this past game, and that was more than the amount of missed tackles they had combined over the previous 3 weeks.
Penetration's always the key, David.
Well,
I mean, we all know that. That's a given.
You lay it out.
You know what?
Tom's gonna jump on
that's
it.
universal.
Well,
I'm not going to jump on it.
You tee it up, he's going to hit it out of the park. All right, how about that?
That's what
an alley-oop for Tom. David Lombardi with us from The Athletic. David, in terms of the Minnesota Vikings defense, Tom and I were looking at their numbers, and we were going, man, they're a little bit better than we thought. They're pretty darn good against the run. They're not as good against they're good against the pass as well in terms of yards per attempt. I think they're better than the Niners, right?
No. They're better than the run.
Better than the run.
Pass, you can exploit them a little bit, but they're pretty good against the run.
The point I was trying to make is that Brock Purdy's coming off a bad performance. He could be without some of his top offensive weapons, either on the O-line or skill position players. He potentially could be the star of the offense again, where the spotlight's on him. What do you know about Minnesota and their defense, and what kind of challenges it poses?
They blitz more than anybody in the NFL. Brian Flores has them blitzing 33% of the time, and the 49ers have already seen that with Wink Martindale and the New York Giants. That was like a historic game where they blitzed 85% of the time, and it took the 49ers a little bit of time to adjust and start running a lot of screens, and ultimately Purdy had a 300-yard game, and they put up 30 points, and it was good. But Minnesota's going to bring a similar challenge. They're going to bring a lot of A-gap pressure. I don't know if you remember the disaster of a game in 2020 the 49ers played against Miami. Jimmy Garoppolo.
What was that guy's name? Brian Allen. The Brian Allen game.
Yeah, Brian Allen.
Off the street.
Other side of the ball is I think that I don't know if they did or not, but it seemed that Jimmy Garoppolo was coming off of injury. It didn't seem like he was fully healthy, and then he just exited the game at halftime because it was so bad. Yeah, in the first half, and it was exactly what somebody coming off of ankle injury wouldn't be well suited to face, and it was a ton of A-gap pressure they had center issues that year in 2020. I don't think they're down to their fourth stringer yet, but they were on their way to being down to their fourth string centers, and they weren't setting the protections right. The Dolphins were just overwhelming them. So Brian Flores is the same. He's going to be calling the plays for this Minnesota defense, same guy. And I think Jake Brendel is going to be a huge pivot point for the 49ers and how he sets the protections and how they're prepared to handle everything. Because when you have a team that blitzes as much as the Vikings do, it's a boom or bust scenario. You can turn that into a lot of big play opportunities if you do your homework and you're ready for those blitzes. But you have to do your homework because you're not going to have time to react after the snap. You have to be ready to hit the vulnerability that opens up before that snap happens.
What do the 49ers have to be concerned with from a defensive standpoint? No Jefferson, which is I don't know what percentage of the offense, but that guy just gets open no matter what they're doing, and Cousins finds him. Without him, you got Osborne, you got Madison, exactly. Addison from USC. What do you focus on? Like, what do you think they're going to try to do?
Well, I think they have a decent offensive line. They pass protected well. Darrisaw over or left tackle is going to be a good matchup with Bosa. If you look at the Vikings and Kirk Cousins' offensive profile, I think a lot of people are a little fooled. They're wondering, why aren't they better? Kirk Cousins is number 2 in the NFL in passing yards, but the yards haven't exactly been efficient for him. Like most of the, per play efficiency stats, he's down at number 16, and then I'm wondering why that is. And I, watch some of the tape, and I see them struggling a lot on third down, see them struggling a lot in the red zone. And, those are two things that typically happen if your run game is also struggling, because the third downs are a little bit further than are manageable, right? Because you're not getting enough on first and second. And lo and behold, they're number 25 in the run, which is not good, which pairs, I think, favorably with the 49ers, who are trying to fix their run defense. But so far this year, there's been a little bit of garbage yardage in those stats from Kirk Cousins, and you have to keep it that way if you're the 49ers. So the key is to stop the run and have some fun.
We've gone, I'm glad we've gone like 20 minutes without talking about Jake Moody. I always like when we don't talk about kickers. Do you make much of that? 'Cause I don't. The only thing, because I said, look, it's his first game-winning kick. It's outdoors. The weather's not great. He was perfect before this game. He hit a 57-yarder in L.A., and the one he missed in Cleveland beside that one was over 50 yards. So I'm not going to hold that against him. I will say, however, that the next one he comes up against in the fourth quarter will be interesting to watch, because as a kicker, that's what you got to do. You got to flush it, get over it, and move on. And you don't know if they can until they can. Do you make much of that kick, the game-winning kick in Cleveland? And what are you looking for going forward?
Well, I think that's exactly the bet that the 49ers have made. They didn't draft this guy thinking that he was going to be 100% perfect his rookie year. They drafted him realizing that, especially when he went into a new stadium, maybe with sketchy weather, that there were going to be some significant misses. But they also said, okay, we like his mental makeup. We've run him through the ringer of these tests, these fire drill tests on the field where he had a kick on short notice and coming off a miss. They did all this stuff with their special teams coordinator, Brian Schneider, and they said, we think that Jake Moody can handle this. We think that he can bounce back. So you're right. I don't think there's anything to really be learned from him missing against Cleveland. What we're going to learn is how he bounces back from that miss. And to expect him to be perfect would have been unrealistic. Now to see him still struggle after the miss for a prolonged period of time, that's when the alarm bells go off. People are talking about there being a microscope on him. I think there was a microscope on him before this game against Cleveland. Now we've just hit that point where we're going to find out how he bounces back, which is the one variable that the 49ers bet on, and we'll see if their bet was correct.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, David, one of our texters here is people who are just chiming in. David is out. He was getting ready to jump in the bay for a swim. Said he swam to Alcatraz. Do you swim from Alcatraz or to Alcatraz?
We did it from last time. A boat would take us out. We jump in and swim back. But you could also do you can hop in here and the city and swim out there, go around Alcatraz and come back. There's all different ways to do it. You just have to time the currents and the tides and all that. So you're not at the Golden Gate by the time the swim ends.
So one of our texters texted in. He says he's a maritime pilot in the San Francisco Bay, Unit 63. Shout him out, Unit 63. He says, I hear vessel traffic announced swimmer aquatic park to Alcatraz or whatever they always do. And he says, I've always wondered what nuts do that. Now I know it's Lombardi. He said, that's what our texter said. Now I know who it is. It's you. So wave to the maritime guys when you're out there, all right, swimming, because they're listeners.
I will. Yeah, I'm going to give him a wave. Is his name on there? Or is it just like
it just says Unit 63? That's our guy.
Unit 60.
So look for that unit out there.
Yeah, look for a unit. All right, real quick, I got to ask him. When did you? Have you always swam? Is this something that came up, or were you always a swimmer growing up in high school? That kind of stuff.
I was a swimmer growing up and all that. And then but I kept it in the lap pools up until the lap pools all closed in 2020.
Okay.
And then I was like, well, I still got to stay in shape and do this. So I just started swimming in the bay, and it was so cold when I first started. But then your body kind of acclimates to it.
Yeah.
And at the Dolphin Club, where I'm now a member, at first I would always wear a wetsuit, and then they would give you a hard time for wearing a wetsuit. So I still wear it in the winter. I'm not at that level yet where it's 49 degrees. Yeah. I'm not wearing a wetsuit. That's kind of stupid, I think. But when it's 60, which is still cold, I can go in without a wetsuit now. And you just look it up online. The health benefits of cold water are really, really cool. And I feel so good after I get out. So it kind of is a centerpiece of my days now.
I think that's awesome.
That's
I really do. And I've started taking I hated doing it, David, taking cold showers. It would shock me so much that I just didn't do it. And then finally I just said, you know what? This is supposed to be good for you. I'm going to do it. So I went straight as cold as the tap water would do. And I put on some heavy metal. And then cranked it up as loud as I could go, and and then after about 5 times of doing it, now I can do it. It doesn't bother me as much, but it's a shock to the system for your body to get used to it. I tell you, but apparently it's good for you, so I'm trying it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. Whatever is good for you, or whatever brings great reward, isn't always easy, right? So you have to kind of get through that.
Well, have a great swim in.
Yeah, have a great swim.
We appreciate the time, and watch out for the sharks, dude.